so long. He was saying it was no longer mine. And so he says, I think I know. And so he said to me, so we're going to do some tests and we'll find out. And I'm at this point, I tell my wife, I said, he's crazy. I'm not going to this man ain't going to test you. He tells me my sarcoidosis. And I really was upset. And he said, I'll call you in about a week, 10 days. He called me the next day. I didn't answer the phone. Primarily because I had dealt with another doctor. I know we got some nerds in here. If a doctor says, I'll call you in a week, and he calls in 24 hours, there was nothing good about this conversation. So I wasn't ready for this. I don't answer the phone the first day. By the way, when I went to see him, it was Valentine's Day. And the next day was 15. That's a whole other story. And he calls to get him the 60. He's persistent. My wife says, answer the phone. I answer the phone. We talk. He says to me, he says, well, all the tests are not complete. What I do want to tell you, you don't have sarcoidosis. I started crying. Because 36, at that point, 36 years of my life was being treated for a condition that in my mind, how did doctors miss? I did not really know. He said, but I do think you have a rare disease, and in our hospital we have specialists. He said, she's probably the best in the world. We need to see if she can take. She hasn't taken new patients in 12 years because she does so much research. He said, if we can get her, it's going to take a while. This is February 15th, 16th. I didn't have an appointment with her until November 2nd. November 2nd, we get to her office, and now she does not, again, my life I've been in hospitals, doctors, you name it. So when a doctor walks in with 4 other doctors, there's an issue. So there's 5 doctors in the room with me and my wife. And the lead doctor is smiling. She said, I've been waiting to meet you. And I'm looking at her and I said, really? She said, well, I'm going to tell you unequivocally, you do not have sarcoidosis. She said, and we know 100% what you do have. So what is it? She said, you have a disease, rare disease called common variable immunodeficiency. It's actually CVID. She said, so let me tell you what this is. She said, you know, we have antibodies that in our bodies that fight pathogens. We're our nurses in here, by the way. There we go. This, for our nurses, this is really going to get you. Have you ever heard of this disease before? No. Yeah, it's super rare. Most medical doctors who I've spoken to after, they always want to talk to you because they've read about it in medical school and never actually seen someone. So I said, she said, so let me tell you what this is. I like looking at my nurses, I want to see their reaction to it. She said, Mr. Walrond, you have no antibodies. I said, what do you mean? She said, at some point, you had some, now you have none. And the reason why we're here, we're trying to figure out, how are you alive? Now, on my records, what they saw is that in 2005, 2012, and 2014, I had sepsis 3 times in my life. In 2012 and 14, it was MRSA. And you survived, she said, with no antibodies. She said, this is remarkable. She said, you're old enough to remember years ago there was a movie with John Travolta, The Boy in the Bubble. Yeah. She said, that's the disease. She said, and yet you had no diagnosis, you did no treatment, no protection. You surely were not in the bubble. She said, in fact, you probably worse profession as a pastor, preacher, talking to people, traveling, shaking hands. She said, a cold could kill you, a flu could kill you, a cut could kill you. She said, you traveled around the world, yeah? She said, so every time you got immunizations, they never worked. Because you had no antibodies for them to latch onto. When you were a baby, you got vaccinations, they did not work. She said, so we have to study to find out how you have lived at that time to 46 with no antibodies. I had 2 diseases, come to find out. CVID is rare, but sometimes it comes with a companion disease called granulomatous. Granulomatous is an immunodyssimilation, which means then that most of us who have regularly healthy immune systems. The white blood cells send the signal something is wrong. White blood cells go to work, those immune cells come. I have no immune cells really that come to work, so my white blood cells make a decision. They say, hey guys, there's nobody coming to help. So we need to do the job. This is why it's a mutation that they weren't designed to do. So what happens? My white blood cells sends calls to other white blood cells. They come together and form granulomas, which are small tumors. So my life I had these tumors. So now, 2018, August 28th, that's why I have to share the story. August 28th, 2018, I had a massive hemorrhagic stroke. Ruptured the blood vessels in my brain because one of those tumors grew in my brain and caused a stroke. All right? When I came out of the stroke, I wasn't talking well, that's how my body was. Fast forward to the conversation I had with my neurologist at the Neurological Institute at Columbia. And I was down because I had things like auditory hallucinations. I never heard that in my life. Because the way the stroke took place, I kept hearing things. I thought I was going crazy. It was the same sound, like sandpaper in my head all the time. I'd be talking, I could hear it. Sitting down still, I could hear it. I had word recall problems. I had memory lapses, short-term memory lapses. And I was frustrated. And I told the neurologist, and he knew me, he knew I was a pastor. He said, he goes to the computer, he punches up the computer, he pulls up my MRI from the day I had the stroke, where, you know, if you have blood in your brain, an MRI is bright. So the whole half, the right hemisphere of my brain is bright. He said, I want you to know that there are none of my colleagues who, if they saw your MRI and saw you sitting here in front of me, would believe that you were the same person who had this stroke. He said, this stroke should have killed you. He said, but I suspect something. He said, the tumor caused it. He said, but the strange thing was the position of the tumor. He said, the position of the tumor actually slowed the bleeding enough to allow the brain to clot. He said, that's why you're still alive without the damage you should have had. One, I have no antibodies. Two, I had a massive stroke in 2018. You cannot tell. Miracle. Sometimes you don't believe these things still happen. But they do. How can I not speak about possibility when I embody possibility? That's the word of hope we must leave people with. Word of possibility. That's for the possible. For the creativity. I'm with the healing. And I've gone over my time. Thank you so much.
So we have about half an hour for questions for Pastor Mike.
And hopefully there was enough here to stir up some thoughts and ideas. And just anything. I tell both comments, questions, criticism.
I'm here, but then there's some upstairs.
Yes, sir.
So, in your understanding of the progressive idea of understanding God and the possibility that He can open for us, I'm curious where your line of authority of Scripture comes in. Because there are some of the churches who say, yeah, it's great for that idea of the evolving thought of God, but doesn't Scripture call us to be founded at least in some aspects of the truth of God?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we are steep in aspects. I'll give you an idea. You know, when you begin to encounter, let me back up. Here's a word that we use in church. We're afraid of church because we want to get lost in certain ideas of truth about God. And our commitment to the ideas about the truth of God often make us, we become antithetical to revelation. If you honor God and the truth of God as not just revealed in Scripture, but also shaped by creed and doctrine, where does revelation come in? The revealed Word of God. I tell people, and I get asked that question a lot, especially when I teach, And for me, Scripture holds and will always hold a profound space in my theological framework. But here's what I also remind people, right? In terms of the father, who we would consider the father of the faith, who is that? Abraham. So when we refer to the God of who? Abraham. What Bible do they have? What was their scripture? So we teach about people who had no scripture. And then we want people to be addicted to it. They have to trust the revelation through the relationship. It is not either or. It is both and. Because what scriptures really are, and here's what we also have to be honest about. Scriptures in some way, not scriptures, but our creedal language, and I come out of that tradition. And our doctrines are attempts to explain experiences with God. But as we explain experiences, we have to always be mindful of limitations of explanation. The problem is not that an explanation cannot be given. The problem is that oftentimes our explanation and our language is done and given with no humility. Meaning that our language cannot capture the enormity of God. Our language is our attempt to give voice and explanation to an experience that is transcended by nature. So scriptures in many ways gives us a narrative, a history of encounter. For me, scriptures point me to possibility. It does not limit my imagination. When I read the stories of Abraham or Isaac or Moses or Elijah, it points me to what is possible, but doesn't keep me bound to their experience. A famous preacher who was a mentor of mine, his name was Gardner Taylor. And Dr. Taylor said, there's a gospel that has not been written. The gospel according to you. It's a gospel that emerges from your encounter with God. What do you say about the encounter? So the authority of Scripture is critical, but I also know that oftentimes we place the authority in Scripture with devoid of humility, which means sometimes we don't always make room for God's revealed word. Jesus comes in many things in our language. The incarnation of God. But the one thing we forget sometimes is Jesus comes as a revelation of God as well. It is God being revealed anew and afresh. Not dismissing the tradition, as Jesus would say, I would say, and put this on Jesus. When you hear things like, I know you've heard this, but now I say this. That means that even in Jesus' practice, there's room for revelation and reimagining. That's what I would say. So for me, the scripture is always paramount. But the scripture does not bind my possibility. It really gives me an openness to what is possible with God. Thank you for that.
Hi, I'm a children's minister here. I'm a lay person. But before I became children's minister here, I taught art for many years in a Catholic school, I know. So I just want to share this idea of creativity. Most of us have come through educational institutions, and I assume through seminaries, that have formed us so that creativity is not really flowing through our bodies, our blood. So two areas that I work in, I'm an artist and I work with children. Put those two together, and what do you have? You have the source, you have a wellspring of creativity. I came here today, I'm only here because I was supposed to be doing child care. I don't see, no children are here. Okay, that's number one. And do we in our parishes, do we look at the children? The children are the most imaginative. They are the most creative of the people in the parish. Do we incorporate them in leadership? Do we have young people on our vestries? Do we listen to them? Or do we shove them in the back of the church? Put them in the basement?
That's real.
Okay, that's number one. Number two, we're the artists. Get us in on the conversations. I mean, I've had classes in creativity. How many people here in seminary have classes in creativity? Okay, so if we could look to artists, musicians, every parish has a musician, if you want to say, get them involved. So these are ways to foster ongoing creativity. I say that from my own personal and professional experience.
Well, thank you. I think what's amazing to me is that one of the words we use for God is creator. And yet, the creation is afraid to create. God invites us to that work, right? And sometimes we're reluctant to engage that work. When I look at the carpenter, and I'll continue to refer, what I see in Jesus is amazing imagination, creativity, and the one thing, or two, courage and audacity. Think about this. I'm going to go back to the initial scripture I used in John, the raising of Lazarus, right? We've heard it tons of times, maybe Sunday school. And then we put a premium on, Jesus saying, Lazarus, come forth. I've always wondered, though, what was working in Jesus' mind on the way to Bethany? Like, to think about the courage and imagination to think that someone dead can walk out of a tomb. Like, what was, and I don't have the right words, and that's the beauty of it. What was it working in him to stand before that tomb with the smell of death and speak words that are counter to all the evidence and believe that something would happen? That radical imagination, the creativity. I think about the creativity of my grandmother in some way. We came, for me, and in our culture, when people came from home, they had that one house where everybody stayed until they made it on their feet. Our house was that house. I was the only child living in the house with 13 adults. And you talk about creativity. And I would see my grandmother make meals for 14 people. And you had to have an imagination when you had limited resources. Sometimes abundance can kill imagination. That's why I love Jesus in the passage read by the bishop this morning. Take nothing with you. That forces creativity and imagination. But at the end of the day, here's another image. How many of you saw the movie came out with King's Speech? Remember that movie? It's a great movie. I love it. There was a scene, the whole movie is made because the guy who was helping the King Edward stop stammering was acting as though he was a pathologist. Remember, he's an actor. He wasn't even real. He got the gig, and it was as big as he conned everybody. But here's the thing. He actually, if you remember this scene with King, he said, when did you start stammering? And the King says, well, as long as I can remember. He said, no. When did it start? He said, from the time I was a child. He said, no child is born stammering. At some point, someone made you feel as though your words had no value. Our fear of creativity is not inherent. What almost comes to us more naturally, if you think about the child, is our wild imagination, our creativity in the moment, our courage. Think about it. When you have children, you have to stop them from being so courageous. Child will just sit there and run and try to jump off the second floor and just go. You got to grab them, stop. You don't do that. Now we're doing it for the safety, but they have no fear. They want to discover. Now they learn sometimes through pain, but they're discovering. They're journeying. I would get in trouble sometimes. I wanted to say, go to my room. But this is not the same. These are the days when room was really a punishment. Now kids don't come out the room. I got everything I need right here. They come out for food. But to go to the room, back in those days, it was like punishment. But then something happened in the room. You started making up stuff. You start pulling this little truck here, and you pull these toys, you pull these blocks, and you start building a fortress, and you had soldiers, and you made the whole war. And pretty soon, what started out as punishment became a space of creativity. Because the child's imagination is amazing. So you said, somewhere along the line, we're told not to be so creative. Right?
So the first year I started teaching art in a Catholic school, I walked into the classroom and I said, they had all the materials out on the table, and I said, let's draw this. People, it took years to break down that fear. The fear that this isn't math class, and 1 and 1 doesn't have to be 2. But our institutions support, and more, this idea that we have to learn to detest and all that. But what I say is that it starts young and it starts early.
Yes.
This pattern of being afraid to color outside of the lines, let alone draw. So,
And that work of the teacher in that moment is the one who can understand that genius is not about your ability to conform to the lines. It's about the ability to see art outside the lines, right? That's what this work is. It is, to me, if I use the same analogy, the work of the carpenters is, and use the same language, where do I see art outside the lines? That's the word.
it's also craftsmanship.
Yes,
I
that's-
think of a carpenter, Jesus spent the majority of his life honing a craft.
Yes.
Creativity is there. We're locked in. Think about the scene, the man born blind. Think about what the disciples said to Jesus first. Operating within the assumed knowledge. Who sinned? Because in we all know, the idea was this physical affliction had to be a manifestation of some sin. This man or his parents. They couldn't conceive of a possibility that this physical affliction had no connection to sin. Jesus says what? Neither. But somehow, this man's condition is connected to the glory of God. Can you imagine? To say that to those men, those people at the time, who can only see this man one way, now he elevates the man and the conversation. Oh, this moment is not about sin. It's about glory. That is the work of the carpenter. This, again, the reimagining. Breaking the bounds, the bindings, glory, connected to affliction. Whereas for them, affliction is connected to sin. That's reimagining. That's that. I think it's one in someone saw. Yes.
Could you share from your own experience how passion for the gospel, maybe you use the example of the air conditioner, but of engaging with your community?
Absolutely. So, that's a good question. I didn't even hit on it, but you didn't opportunity to do it. So, one of the things, there was a book by, hold on, I can see him. You guys see his colleague. Anyway, he wrote a book, Aubrey Hendricks. He wrote a book called The Politics of Jesus. He's a New Testament scholar. And one of the things he said in the book is that in following Jesus, we are called to treat the needs of the people as holy. To treat the needs of the people as holy. Now, be honest, those of us who've grown up in the church, who consider ourselves, I tell folks, we're among the ranks of the church. Right? That's me. We have a tendency to think that ministry is shaped by our great ideas or by the patterns that we've done ministry. When you treat the people's needs as holy, it means at first you do what I said earlier in the talk, is that you engage in liberated listening. How can you treat the needs of holy if you don't know what those needs are? Or worse, you make assumptions about what the needs are. Again, who's the model for this? The carpenter. When it comes to the man who was blind, another instance, we would see the blind person say, what? I know he wants to see again. I know she wants to see. What did Jesus say? What would you have me to do? No assumptions. What are your needs? Again, the assumption is I can see, you can see, she can see, he can't see, she can't see. Maybe they want to live life seeing. He says, what you have to do? That question means that The one who seems to be in need for Jesus had value based on their ability to communicate what? Once you hear that, you treat it as what? So what does that mean? So in our community years ago, when we had this thing called, we had co-location in our schools taking place through the interest of charter schools and district schools, and you found district schools, we call them regular public schools, found their space being co-opted by many of the charter schools in that area, particularly in Harlem, and programs are being cut. And people hear about charter schools, and this is not a political conversation right now, but when you hear about that, people say access to great education. Well, in these co-located schools, the district school, to make room for the charter school, had an eclipsing cutting of programs. Can you imagine going to elementary school without gym, with no guidance counselor, with no art programs? So art, recess, gone. What would school have been like for us if we just study, go home? Torture, that's a mild word, right? So what did we do? We started hearing from parents who were part of our congregation, who were expressing this frustration, and so we wanted to create a space. But not only were young people, but now it started as young people, it changed, become intergenerational, can have a space where they can engage in some of these activities. And we created in 2012 the Dream Center, which is this cutting edge space to help people imagine their own dreams. They came to these programs around arts, creativity, entrepreneurship. To the point now we have a partnership with Google. So now you have this digital creativity taking place. But you had young children who were not getting art in the school, who were not just taking art at the Dream Center, they were learning classes on cinematography, screenwriting. It was so amazing, still to this day, right? Last year alone, and here was the key, everything was free. In 2019, we had 71 free programs out of the Dream Center. Became intergenerational. Why? We listened and we treated the needs as holy. Secondly, I found myself, years ago, those of us who do this work as lead pastors, people often come counseling you. But I had a member years ago, the person actually at the church, he said to me, he said, Pastor, I feel like I can't relate to a lot of your sermons. A lot of your sermons you talk about, how to recover from struggling and hardship. He said, I just can't get with that. That's not been my narrative. I said, well, praise be to God for that. I said, here's why that shapes a lot of our preaching. I said, because again, now, how many lead pastors do you have? What are the years? How long have you been? 35 years. Two. How many? 28. 7. Okay, watch this. How many times have people sought you out for counseling to try to figure out how to handle joy? Ask me talking what? I'm just so happy. In 24 years, I never had that. Most people seek you out when things are not going well. Helping people navigate those difficult times becomes the key, right? So what happened is, and here's the other part, we have to be able to admit limitations. So then I started getting more and more counseling requests, and I found myself swamped. So then I was like, listen, and then there's not just the counseling, there were things that came my way that I could not handle, that were beyond my abilities. And so then I got tired of referring people out. So then we started behind a part-time therapist on the staff. It was a clergy, licensed clinical therapist. She got swamped, and it pushed us some more. So then in 2016, again, meeting needs, because in African American community, we still have a lot of communities, but in particular in our communities, there's still a big stigma around issues of mental health. So my thing was, because I had dealt with issues around depression, and I was very transparent in the book about it. Why? If you spend the majority of your life sick, and in pain, and in hospitals, that is depressing. And it pushed me to some very dark places. Questioned a lot of things about who I was, even about my relationship with God. And so I had to start seeking a therapist. It was very open about that. So what happened was, I said, wait, we used to have the woman who did the therapy had an office in the church. And so what we found is that people would come, but here it is, because of the building, because of the location, the building of the city, you would have to come in and sign in. And if you put you were going to see Joyce, it was like everybody knew you were going to see Joyce. So then that became a limitation, because now it was like everybody knows, if I'm coming to see Joyce, I must be crazy. So the idea was we wanted to get a space off-site. So in 2016, we opened up the Hope Center, which is the first free mental health clinic in Harlem. Free. And here's a good thing, when we talk about church and resources, no public monies, all through the funding of the church. Staff, everything. All right? Why? We treat the needs of the people as holy. So what we do, I tell people at FCBC, don't come to me with a great idea, show me great need. Because the great need is, the ideas will come. So our ministry is built on that. So that's how we continue to evolve. And people in the community know us for how we are deeply entrenched in our community. And if nothing else, people know FCBC for being a church that does. For example, you know, many churches have like clothing giveaways. And what I noticed was that sometimes people who are having hardship don't always want to be honest about their hardship. In some of our institutions, the way that we give people clothing, sometimes in the basement of the church, if people come down, there wasn't dignity in that. Here comes to create his thinking outside the box. So years ago, I spoke to one of our associate pastors, and it came with this idea. I said, let's do a clothing mall. In other words, let's transform the church into a mall. Now, we do give out clothes all the time. Into a mall, and here's the catch. We reach out to the local shelters. We litter the community with flyers about the clothing mall. It becomes a big annual thing now. And each person who comes in, watch this is bringing dignity, has a personal shopper who escorts them. We have dressing rooms set up. We have men's accessories, women's accessories, children's clothing, children's shoes, men's shoes. It's a mall. And last year, over 2,500 people came through. We gave out over 6,000 pieces of clothing, plus shoes and everything else. Now, that's doing something the church has always sought to do, bringing clothes to those who are naked. It wouldn't even cutting edge. Let's make the church a mall for a day. You had in Harlem, many children who went to charter schools were missing breakfast at the schools. Deacon King, Darnell, one of the leaders in this. We had children who were missing breakfast, who were coming from the shelters, it was children in shelters, missing breakfast because it was hard to get those students to school on time. Students who were living in shelters, which was a high number, had the highest rates of tardiness in school. Not only were they tardy, but they were missing breakfast. So what did we do? We created a program first. It was one day a week called Breakfast Before Books. And what did we do? We provided breakfast with children who were coming out of shelters sometimes, had a hard time getting to school on time. Well, it started one day, and it went to 2 days. But now, 5 days a week, we feed between 850 to 1,000 children. That's not a new thing to feed. That's what we call to do. But reimagine what it looks like. And then what happened? We started doing it, and it was coming from church resources, and other people started hearing about it. Then all of a sudden, last year, we started getting people, and there was news stories about it, and about the clothing mall, and people heard it, and all of a sudden, the resources started showing up. Then we had partnerships this year with designers and retail stores, and they started donating brand new things and all this stuff. And now, like the Breakfast for Books program, completely funded outside, resourced by people outside the church. We love the program. We treat people's needs whole. And everything we do, we base on that. Not great ideas, great needs, and the ideas need communities. Yes, I will. Oh, yes.
I was just curious about millennials,
Yeah.
because it sounds like you have a really nice percentage of them flocking to your church.
Yeah.
What's drawing them? What's keeping them there? What moves them?
So this is a question we get asked a lot, and we were driving up here actually, And there are little snippets I probably can give. One of them said, for me, young people are not like, and yes, church, we have the young people here today, right? No. Yeah, young people are like, so I'm 49, I'm the oldest pastor on staff. The next pastor in age to me is 36. After that, they drop down all under 30. The youngest pastor on staff actually is my son, who's 28, right? So we have a lot of youth. The head of our media and communications, which is a big deal, is 28. The one who runs the Hope Center, which is the mental health facility, is 36. So a lot of young people see young people. And I like to think I still look kind of young too. But they see young people. So then the other thing is, here's the biggest superpower you have that young people value. Your superpower is your authenticity. Authenticity and transparency. Everybody groans for that. You want to feel like you're encountering a real person, and you treat those needs as holy. You talk to young people, find out what they want to do, find out things that galvanize them. Find creative ways of delivering the gospel, shaping them, forming those communities. How do we form them as disciples? I mean, finding ways to do that intentionally and not just coming up with a good idea and expecting them to show up. Right? So it's really engaging young people as part of the community, but you'll find what they want. Here it is. As I said earlier, they want that relationship, that guidance on how to develop a relationship with God that is devoid sometimes of the institutional baggage. Right? So that's one way. And then, for me, listen, years ago when I came and I was preaching just like I am right now, there were some people who came to visit the church and were offended. We had a woman say one time, "Oh, I cannot listen to a preacher who stands in the pulpit with jeans." Now the funny thing is, let me show you how God works. She came, I can't. A few months came back, and then came back, and every time I saw her, this is what was going on in my mind. Now she works as a lead security person, and guess what she wears every Sunday? Alright. So it is creating a space where authenticity is at the forefront, transparency is at the forefront, a willingness to listen and allow young people to shape, and then being fresh with how we deliver this message. Now here's the deep thing. I'm very honest. When you start looking at some of the fastest growing churches, I can tell you some, right? People look at our church as a model for growth. We between 2009 and 2013, we averaged 1,150 people joining a year. Right? So, but a lot of churches sit down, some even on television, some churches that we consider non-denominational. I found something out that we need to take notes from. Now, I consider our church very progressive and liberating. Right? Other than before my son joined the staff, all the other pastors besides me were women, including my wife. My wife used to be executive pastor for 13 years. And she left me. She didn't leave me. She left church. And now my wife started last year. She's the president of New York Theological Seminary. Right? And so, watch this. So, all of a sudden, these young folk were coming. We were engaged in what we think the ministry, and managing ministry. And it was the ability to empower that became critical. Right? And then seeing themselves, and then they would come and go, ideas, Pastor Mike, we're thinking about doing this, do it. Are you sure that's okay? Yes. And then they took the lead on things. Cultural experiences, religious experiences, faith journeys. I mean, you name it. It was really about young people to build their place. But it's being willing to be fresh with how we deliver the message, fresh with how we integrate people. We hang on to stale ideas too long. And we reinforce the stagnation too long. And then pretty soon people no longer attracted to the space. And it's not that we have to be cash, but here's where I'm really going. A lot of these churches you find, here's what happens. I consider ourselves progressive. And what does that mean? Before my son came on, all the pastors, other than myself, a female, the majority of our deacons are women, the majority of our trustees are women, the majority of leadership in leadership in the church are women, which is not the norm for a Black Baptist church. Okay? And so that became a space. Now, here's what I realized. Some churches, I won't name them, that you could see and you hear, for those who search on Google of these churches, massive ministries. One example, I pastored when Amjad and I went to school. After I graduated, I pastored in Durham for 8 years, as well as being a university minister at Duke. So 8 years in Durham. There's a church called the Summit Church in Durham, right? They have 10 locations in the surrounding area. 10 locations. And what some of these churches have learned is how to package what they present. Now, why do I say that? This church, Summit Church, tons of young people, multicultural, right? And I discovered just last year, the pastor. His name is J.D. Greer. Anybody heard that name? Who's that? He's the president of the Southern Baptist Convention. But the church doesn't have Baptist, Southern Baptist nowhere in the title. I thought it was non-denominational. They call it the Summit Church. Still don't believe in ordaining women. Still don't honor women in ministry. Still don't empower women to lead. And yet the church is full of women and people of color. They just learn how to package. They package it so well, some people don't even feel the oppression. And what I say is that we tune out because theologically their points of departure are so different that we don't see that their mechanisms are powerful because they're filled with young people. Now, my thing was, why aren't the progressive churches, the progressive theology and liberating theology, why are we so reluctant to repackage? And we sometimes leave the packaging in the oppressive space. And that becomes a challenge. So, anybody else? Yes, sir.
I'm really interested in when you got to the church where you are now, and you have a space and you have a congregation, were there things that you kept because they were kind of anchors and rocks, and or did you get rid of anything? But if you had some anchors, what were the reasons why?
So again, Deacon King was there when I got there. So I would say, let me answer this in two ways. One, over the first I got there in 2004, by 2006, all the things that church did when I got there, we got rid of. Leadership changed, everything. And what happened is, it wasn't so much that I got rid of everything. When I brought things back, I shifted language, stretched imagination. I followed the carpenter. You used to call it this. Now we're going to call it this. It wasn't that I got rid of the heart of what we're called to do. I just shifted language. And then I let the practice accompany the language and the culture shifted. So the things of the church are still the pillars. We're still galvanized by the word. We're still galvanized by preaching. We're still galvanized by teaching. We just did a few things differently. Last Friday before last, did something that's challenging, but man, that people don't think we can do it in the church. Same like that. 2 Fridays ago, we call all night TNT. We don't do Bible study. We call it Tuesday night or Tuesday noon transformation. Right? And sometimes we use scripture, sometimes we study books. So we had what we call all night TNT 2 Fridays ago. I taught from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. With a break at 12:30 for a stretch and 2 o'clock for coffee and sugar. Right? We had about 350 people, maybe 4 who showed up and stayed to 6 a.m. Now watch this for our clergy here. You know what I taught in the first half? The history of the ecumenical councils, the formation of the New Testament canon, the formation of scripture, the formation of creeds and creedal language in this Black Baptist church. And folk loved it. Because we think that we can't empower people with the history of the faith. It's one thing to say you're a Christian. I want you to know where it comes from. Because what we find out is that when we get connected to the history, it pushes us to rethink some things that we do. And I spent the rest of the night talking about how we manifest and how we show up in the world as disciples of God. And all those folk came out. They wanted to be there. So yeah, it was the idea. What did I do? Is this something revolutionary? No. I just took what we usually do for an hour. We just did it all night. Not knowing who would show up. Right? So the preaching, the teaching, the proclamation of the word hasn't changed. The teaching of the word changed. It's how we do. We did something one time, one of the ideas we tried and did, it worked for a while. It's called Freestyle Friday. Part of it was because I know the gift of honesty with me. We would, and if young people, it was big with young people, we just ended up incorporating it into our regular service. But it was a Friday night where we would have a question on boards outside. When you came in, whatever the question was, you wrote responses to it on the board, and then they collected the boards, and right before the preaching moment, they put the boards on the stage with me, and I kind of freestyle, improvised based on their answers to service. We had music, we had poets come in and do poetry, we had dancers come to dance, and it was amazing. And then we just made it what? Part of our, so we had to start here, and then boom, it becomes part of our traditional service now. Right? Just not being afraid to just step out and do things differently. The heart, we still do it. Again, that's why I started with that, reimagining, evolving, stretching, expanding. Because it's not so much that we said, nah, to tradition, no, we just started reimagining in ways that now reach more people. And that's what I'm convinced. People think you have to be, here's the thing, I want to be clear. I don't like gimmicks. So we're not gimmicky. Because to me, that's short term. We seek to do community formation differently. I don't like gimmicks. You know, things we think we have to do to attract young people. It's not there. The Jesus movement in many ways was a young movement. We forget that sometimes. Most transformative movements in this country are led by young people. We forget that as well. Anybody say no to me? That's great. No question. That is a total.
Hearing you talk around, and I think you've addressed it indirectly so beautifully, but for me, it's addressing our fear. Fear of letting go of our business, fear of being creative, fear of losing more parishioners if we try something. So much of what I'm hearing, the opposite of fear is faith. But for me, it's letting go of the fear, finding.
Yeah, man, so here's what I think. We can sit here all night and talk about fear. I don't want to do an all-night session today, but part of our fear, as we all know, stems from our insecurities. We love to say, you know, we love the Lord and we're shaped by God. But a lot of times, we're shaped and formed by people whose opinions we place on a hierarchy of value above God in our own. Right? So we're more concerned with reactions than impact. So as a pastor, you step out here, I mean, I've done things at the church where we got ridiculed from the community and other preachers, and I don't know what he's doing. I mean, I heard that all the time. I don't know what he's doing over there at FCD. I don't know what's going on at corner 160. I mean, we got it all. And that's changed. Now they're saying, yeah, what are you doing? But it was me, for me personally, my life has been shaped by a tremendous life force within me. And I know, that's why I believe in part the grace of God, the power of God, but that life force God is best within me. The many things I've had to overcome personally to just be here. And it's not that at all times I'm courageous. But I do know something I've been delivered from a long time ago. But some of us need a good, exorcism. Right? Being delivered from the opinions of people who don't matter to your work. Right? What if Jesus had yielded to the opinions of his critics? We might not even be here today.
Amen.
What if he had capitulated to what they wanted him to do? You know how terrifying it was to stand there in front of a man who's lame and say your sins are forgiven? Which is a whole other conversation for us to move forward, because if Jesus had a commitment, a hunger for healing, and they lower the man through the roof, right? And he's lame. In Luke's version of the gospel, Luke's version of the story, he says, and the power to heal was on Jesus, with him. Now watch, and I love how Luke sets it up. The power to heal is with him. They lower the man to the roof who cannot walk. And with that power to heal, he says what? Sins are forgiven. Healing. But it didn't time. Because that man's life had been shaped by the assumption that his condition was based on what? Somebody had done something wrong. So healing for that man was not just about the capacity to walk. It was about the ability to know that what people think and how they feel ought not be definitive of who you are. That's the work we're called to do. When I was a young boy, my grandfather said, listen, there's going to come a day, there's not going to be anybody but you and God. And he would say, you got to answer for yourself. And so you can't say, well, you know, I didn't do this because, what is your name? Jordan. I didn't do this, God, because Jordan felt some kind of way about it. I couldn't move out on faith, God, because Tom didn't like it. It's honoring that deep call you hear. So one of my spiritual mentors, Howard Thurman, he would like it this way. It is the deep that is in you, reaching to the deep that is in God. The deep that is in God, reaching to the deep that is in you. And he said, it is deep speaking unto deep. It is honoring that. And so it can be a fearful proposition. I could be here all day with this, because this is why I think one of the reasons in the biblical narrative, Jesus goes from baptism to temptation to public ministry. And in the baptism moment, he hears something that he needed. So we don't like to humanize Jesus in any way. That's why he becomes so disconnected. Young people don't make Jesus a human being. We like to stay at homoousios. We only hang on one side of that divine. Right? And so we don't make Jesus Jesus became flesh, but we don't make Jesus very fleshly. And so, in one version of the gospel says, and he heard God say. One version, people heard, in this version, he heard God say, you are my son. How much did he need to hear that? You are my son. Why would he need to hear that if he knew who he was? I don't believe that, but maybe he was wrestling. You are my son in whom I'm well pleased. Before you do one thing, before you heal one person, before you preach one sermon, before you do one teaching, you're loved. And I'm pleased. Gosh, that liberates you from being crippled by people's opinions. I'm loved and God is pleased. And then the temptation, and then the word. There's some things based on the relationship with God that you have and the deep faith and belief you have. There's some things that ought not matter as much as we give them relevance. Right? Sometimes we wake up one day and we're so fixated on our performance that we don't even realize we're performing for no one. We turn around and where's the crowd? But we've let, and this is the idea of the empty crowd, we've let the crowdless space dictate our direction, our opinions, and our word. We're more guided by committees than conviction. We're more shaped by what people want to see than what we're being called to do. And who is your trust in at the end of the day? We sing songs, you know, my hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I think I trust the sweetest rain, the holy name on Jesus' name, on Christ the solid rock of my stand. All other ground is sinking sand. We're being shaped by sinking sand. I'm not trusting what God is doing. There's no formula of overcoming fear, but what it is trusting the voice, like Abraham, like Isaac, like Jacob, like Moses, like Elijah, like Elisha, trusting the voice. Good. Thank you again. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think you would understand now what we meant by this day is going to be inspirational, right? So thank you for inspiring us. But now the work begins, all right? So the idea that we have now is that we go into some of our workshops or equipping sessions, and I'd like to invite the leaders of those equipping sessions to please come forward and in 30 seconds give a very quick description of what your session is going to look like so that the people here can make a decision